So the number one piece of advice I can give to people listening to this is have a call to action. It's not salesy. You are helping your community, and people want to know what the next steps are. They want to know how they can move forward. The thing that you have to remember is that, we've all worked with doctors. We've all worked with professors. We've all worked with blah, blah, blah. Most people have not worked with an attorney. They find this process intimidating. They find it scary. They have no idea what to expect. It's okay to kind of lay out the process and make it very clear, this is your next step.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Answering Legal's Everything Except the Law podcast. I am your host, Nick Werker. If this is your first time tuning in, this is the podcast where we share expert advice on all the parts of running a law firm that attorneys weren't exactly trained for back in law school. Now, over the past few years, the working habits of attorneys have been examined pretty heavily. We've seen many in the industry starting to question whether lawyers need to be tethered to their office or suffer through the working like the 80-hour work weeks. So our guest today is one of those people. In fact, she is known as the 2-hour lifestyle lawyer and is on a mission to help attorneys do estate planning from anywhere in the world while working just 2 hours a day. I'm very excited to hear more about this because I would love to work just 2 hours a day. Laura, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I totally get it. It sounds too good to be true, but it's actually what I'm doing now in my own law practice. So I'm excited to talk about this.
I am excited to learn more. So can you take us inside your journey working in law and tell us a little bit about how your career and your working habits have obviously evolved over the years?
Yeah, so I've been practicing law for about 6 years now, and I went to law school a little bit later in life. I was, before law school, I was a CPA for many years. So I worked at Goldman Sachs, Ernst & Young, some different hedge funds here in New York, and went to law school a little bit later in life, and opened my own practice kind of on a whim in late 2016 in the middle of New York City, which it's one of those things where I think if I had known how hard it was going to be, I wouldn't have done it. But I didn't know how hard it would be, so I just went ahead and did it. And I was in one of those circumstances where I had to make it work, right? I knew I was not going to go back to working for someone else. And I really didn't have any kind of a safety net, didn't have any clients that I was bringing with me, didn't have any experience, didn't have any financial safety net. So I had to find a way to make my law practice work. And I did. And it's now 6 years later. And I've been ranked the second best estate planning attorney in all of New York by Yelp. I don't know how that happened, but that happened. And so I've been a solo for 6 years just doing estate planning. So I don't do any probate. I don't do any trust admin. I don't really do any taxable estates. If that comes my way, I just refer it out for a fee split. So I've built a pretty high 6-figure law practice just doing estate planning, meaning will plans for $2,500 to $3,000, trust plans $4,500.
Wow. That's an incredible amount of growth in a short amount of time. Yeah. I feel like if you went to law school late and then you only started in listen, that's just super impressive in and of itself. But I want to talk about this whole 2 hours a day thing, obviously. I mentioned in the opening that your mission is to teach lawyers how to do estate planning from anywhere in the world and also just working 2 hours a day. So can you explain to our audience how you went about achieving this mission and then how you sort of teach them to do it?
Yeah, so I didn't start out working 2 hours a day. I should be really clear about that. It's building the practice is really hard. They talk about this in this book called Good to Great. I don't know if you've heard of it or read it. And I haven't read it in a long time, but they have this analogy where like when you first start out with your business, it's like you're pushing this giant round stone that's like super heavy, and you're pushing it and you work really, really hard and it moves a little bit, and then you push some more and it moves a bit more. And then what ends up happening is eventually after time, it just starts to roll on its own. So it is really hard in the beginning, but eventually you do get to the point, and this is the point that I'm at now, where I'm only spending a couple of hours a day on my estate planning business. And the rest of the day is spent, I've got other business endeavors. I've got my coaching practice, for example. So It doesn't start out at 2 hours a day, but basically one of the things I do in my very first modules is I show attorneys, 2 hours a day, that's 10 hours a week, that's 40 hours a month. What you should be doing with that 40 hours, the bulk of your time should be spent holding events, whether that's in person or webinars, right? That's the best way to get business as an estate planning attorney. Now, it doesn't mean you're not going to get business from other places. Yes, referrals are great from clients, from financial advisors. That's all great. You're going to get people who just find you online. You're just going to get people who fall into your lap. But the best way to be able to turn the faucet on and off in terms of I need more business, I need less business, is to hold events. And I used to do all of this in person pre-2020, and then the world changed, and now we've all been doing webinars, which works just as well. And so that's what you should be focusing your time on, getting out there, educating your community, getting in front of people. Because what happens with estate planning is that people aren't ready to buy right away. It's not like personal injury or DUI or something like that where people are kind of in a panic. They need to be educated. They need to be nurtured. So you start by holding events. People see you, they get to know you, they like you, then you drive them to book a consultation. And so then the next step is, well, now you have to close those people, right? So there's no point in spending time and money getting leads and getting in front of people if you can't close them when you actually meet with them. So that's where the bulk of your time should be spent. Now, once you've gotten the close, then a lot of the work behind the scenes can be either delegated to a qualified paralegal, or it can be automated, or you can have systems in place. This is a great area for putting systems in place because you do tend to run everyone through the same process. So that's how you get down to a couple of hours a day. And that's what I'm doing now. And I'm teaching other lawyers how to do this, making $10,000 a month, which in the beginning, it seems like that's really hard, but you find out pretty quickly that once you get the systems dialed in, it's not that hard. And the main point of all of this is that I just noticed this trend post-COVID that attorneys, we don't all want $1 million law firm, right? We don't all want an eight-figure law firm. And so many of the gurus out there teaching you have $1 million law firm. And it's like, well, I don't really want that. I'd be happy just making $10,000, $20,000 a month, being able to work from anywhere and not working as much. There's so many lawyers that fall into that bucket and no one is marketing to those people except me.
I feel like you're right. I hear a lot, and I talk to a lot of people who are like, I'll help you make $1 million a month. I'll help you make $1 million a year or 100,000 a month or whatever the number is, right? But that's for a specific, like, ambitious group of people who want to work 100 and something hours a week, right? Nothing wrong with that either. But I think to me especially, the model of working 2 hours a day is really attractive because I just want to like spend time with my family and do the things that I want to do in life. But before we dive too deep in this conversation, can you confirm that your program is not just for those who are currently practicing estate planning?
Exactly. So there's a lot of people in my program who are brand new to estate planning, which is great. When I started my practice in late 2016, I was also brand new to estate planning. I had never done a single estate plan in my life. So you can start from scratch. And this is a really good practice area to do that because most people can be served with a basic will or a living trust, which you can get up to speed on the law behind that pretty quickly. I mean, there's a lot to learn. I'm not going to deny that. And you don't learn it overnight, but so few people, estate planning gets complicated when you start to have estate tax issues, right? But right now the estate tax exemptions, the federal ones are so high, it's 24 million approximately for a married couple, right? So since so few people have $24 million, the vast majority of people don't need the complicated tax planning. And this is a question that I get a lot actually is, I want to do estate planning, but I don't want to do the tax stuff. And it's like, well, you don't have to because most people don't even have a taxable estate. And then your state might have an estate tax and that might be different. But the point is you can get up to speed on this pretty quickly and get plenty of business pretty quickly. And you don't have to have an LLM in taxation. And I would recommend that you not stress about that because it just isn't needed. So my course is for everybody. It's for people who've been in estate planning for a while, but they're having problems either getting leads or closing those leads, which is a problem that a lot of attorneys have. And then it's also for people who are brand new to estate planning.
So based on what you've seen, because it seems like if you want to work fewer hours, it's kind of easy to get into it. How have the expectations of the estate planning clients shifted over the past couple of years? Is it sort of hard for attorneys who haven't been practicing estate planning to meet the expectations of these clients? And do you think that the clients themselves are more willing to engage in things like virtual communication and transferring documents virtually?
Definitely. So I started at an interesting time because, let's just say early 2017, I did this 17, 18, 19. Yeah. So for 3 years pre-COVID. And so that was you tethered was the word that you used. And that's the word that I used too. You were tethered to the office because we had the technology to do all of this virtually, but it wasn't socially acceptable, right? It just, nobody would hire a lawyer to do their will or their trust without meeting at their office, having every meeting at the office. That's just the way that it was done. And that all changed in March 2020. So now I've had about 3 years on the other side, and it literally changed. I'm in New York City. It might be different in other areas, but it changed overnight. And I have not done a single meeting. I can probably count on one hand the number of client consultations I've had in person since March of 2020. So that's great. So, I mean, this is great news for attorneys. And this is why I started this course, because something that used to have to be, you had to be in your area and you had to be in the office, has completely changed. There are people in my course who, one woman wants to move to Portugal, and she's going to be able to do what I teach from Portugal, because you can do the initial client consultation, and we teach you how to close via Zoom, which is a different skill set. We teach you how to hold events, obviously, via Zoom webinars. That's how you get your leads. And then you can have the rest of the client meetings via Zoom. Then the only thing that has to happen in person is the signing ceremony. But I wouldn't even say that has to happen in person. They need to be in front of two witnesses and a notary, or depending on your state what the laws are. But there's no rule that you have to be there. You can have a paralegal on site, so oversee things if you want. And you can supervise via Zoom. You can run the whole thing, and no one's going to even know that you're sitting in Portugal. And so before, this just wasn't acceptable at all, but now it is. And on top of that, I feel like it's almost preferred that clients, in other words, are perfectly happy to do this as well. Now, not everyone. You're going to get their person who's like, no, I want to meet in person. It's up to you to decide how you want to handle that. But it's a lot of bad things happened with COVID, obviously, but some things did come out of it that I think really sped things up. And clients are happy to do the whole process over Zoom.
I agree with the clients, because I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to go to your office. Actually, I have this guy. I hope he's listening to this, because I don't like him. He didn't do a good job. But the guy that helped me buy my house, I'm busy. I'm working. And he would call me up in the middle of I'm like, dude, I'm working. You cannot call me. And he's like, oh, I need to come down. I need you to sign this in person. I need to come to your office. I was like, no, you don't. You can send me a DocuSign. I don't want you to come down here. And he insisted on it, right? So I can't imagine that, especially now with all of the availability of Zoom and DocuSign, and you could mail it to me and I'll send it back. You know what I'm saying? We could use that. That still works. Now that clients have so many options, and if they don't want to travel, or if they do, that's a totally different thing. You could set that up. But I think it's important to meet the expectations of your clients, like what you're talking about. I do want to talk about finding the ideal clients for your business, because I think that's something that a lot of lawyers struggle with. So do you have any recommendations for estate planning attorneys that can help them attract the ideal clients to their business?
Yeah, so I feel like it's broken up. There are many buckets, but I think there are three big ones. You're either going to be working with senior citizens, and those are people who might need help with Medicaid planning, elder law, I guess is what I would call it. I work with young families, which I think is a really great market to target, because people who've just had children, or they've got minor children at home, I think out of all the people that I've worked with, are the most eager to get planning done. They're really concerned about what would happen if something happens to the parents, what's going to happen to our kids? They may not have as much money as older people, but they're really motivated. Another group is business owners. That's another target, but you can even narrow it down further. You can focus on people who aren't married, or maybe there's all different communities that you can focus on. But it's important to think about what your group is going to be, because you're going to target, your marketing is all going to be tailored around that. Now, it doesn't mean that people in other buckets aren't going to land in your lap. I mean, I don't market at all to elderly people or the senior citizen group, but every now and then I get someone in that group, and that's fine. But that matters because I encourage hosting when I say workshops, I mean basically webinars. Hosting webinars to try to get clients, the language that you use, advertising that webinar and reaching out to try to get people to attend your event, it's going to be different if you're speaking to someone who's got a 5-year-old versus someone who's 60 and trying to apply for Medicaid. So you do need to think about your avatar.
So, and this is something that I've wanted to ask you since we started having this conversation. I obviously had to wait, and I'm going to let it progress. You got to build up to it. But as you build your business, obviously you get more leads, and you have more to do, and you have more work to do for your clients. How can you continue to make sure that your workload doesn't end up like outgrowing this 2-hour-a-day practice? How do you stay down at 2 hours, even though your business might be growing significantly?
Yeah, so the 2 hours is really sort of tied into the $10,000 a month. If you're going to scale up, then you're going to creep higher than 2 hours. But the main thing to remember is that if you want to scale up your business, the scaling up that you're going to be doing, what does that mean? Okay, it means you're going to be getting more business. Well, how do you do that? It means you're going to be holding more events, or getting in front of more people at the events that you are holding, or doing more networking, that kind of a thing. So you spend more time bringing in the business, and then you're going to be spending more time in that initial consultation, because that's where you get the close. But then after that, and this is what most attorneys get wrong, from the minute the client says yes, the onboarding, maybe the design meeting, certainly the drafting can all be outsourced, right? I outsource my drafting to a company called Back Office Drafting, and they do an amazing job. So you're spending more time presenting, educating your community, getting out there, and you're going to be spending more time in that initial consultation. But then everything else after that, if you do it right, is going to be automated, delegated, outsourced. And so you're going to be working a little bit more, but the income is going to go up a lot more than the workload goes up. Does that make sense?
Yes. We will be right back after this short ad.
When a client calls, they're really looking for immediate service. Because we have Answering Legal, we're able to see every client message, and we're able to contact our clients immediately. My name is Margot Gaines, and I'm a partner at Gaines & Musico. We started using Answering Legal because we were unable to answer all of our phone calls. Answering Legal has allowed my firm to get hired on numerous clients that we never would have. We get messages throughout the night and on the weekends. Sometimes we're in court or we're dealing with other clients. And because of Answering Legal, my partner and I are able to address any client concerns or any new clients immediately, and it's really increased our business. Answering Legal has allowed us to service our clients in a way that their needs are met and their phone calls are answered, and we're able to spend more time doing the things that are necessary for our clients.
Without giving away all of your secrets, can you tell me a little bit about what your events and webinars sort of look like, and how they work to get you more new business?
Yeah, so the main thing, and first of all, let me just give a quick example as to why I'm such a big fan of events. I've been doing them since I opened my firm in late 2016, and the model has changed over time. But I gave an event, and I've had some real duds, I guess I would say. They don't always result in a ton of business, but But I gave an event in April of this year. There was a parents group that I was unaware of in New York City. It was a Facebook group called Mom Manhattan. And most of the moms in that group, they live in New York City, but their families are all in Israel. And so they were all concerned, what happens if the parents pass away here in the States? And we want our kids to go back to Israel. We want to make sure that all the legal paperwork is there because all of our families are in Israel. So the woman who leads this group found me online. This is one of the reasons why it's important to have a good online presence, and asked if I would present. And here's a little tip for you all. If someone asks if you will present, you just say yes, right? Just say yes, and then figure out the details later. And so I said, of course. And so we set up a time, scheduled the webinar, got it on the calendar, and she advertised it within her Facebook group. And she did all the work, because you have to understand that these groups, if you find the right groups, they're thrilled to have an estate planning attorney come in and talk about the next steps for getting a will in place, right? So I presented. We had over 100 people sign up, which is amazing, because that's 100 people for my email list. And of those 100, I think about 70 showed up to my webinar. And I've gotten probably $70,000 of business from that one event. And to this day, we're now into October. I'm still getting people booking appointments who are like, I was at your event back in April. Now that's way beyond my usual success. But the point is, if you do it right and you dial it in, you can really get a lot of business from it. But I think what I was going to say, that was a very long segue to what I was going to say, which is that I think the key to the events that most lawyers get wrong is that they just get up there, they have some basic information. This is a will versus a trust. This is why you need an estate plan. And then they say, okay, thanks. Here's my number. Call me if you have questions, because they feel like it's too salesy to do anything else. They already feel salesy holding the events, which is wrong. You should not feel salesy at all. You're educating your community. You're giving information that people want to have and they care about. And then telling them what the next steps are also is not salesy, because what you're doing is you're offering what I offer at the end anyway. I make a very strong call to action, and that's to book an initial consultation with me. But then I spend a lot of time talking about what the benefits of that consultation are going to be, right? Do not call it a free consult. Give it a name, give it a purpose, and then talk about what the benefits are going to be. And then really walk through, this is the process with my firm. This is how things play out. I don't talk about my fees until we get into that initial consultation. But, first what you're doing is you're selling the event. Just come to the event, baby steps. And then at the event, then you're just selling the initial consultation. And only when you get to the initial consultation do you sell the estate plan. So the number one piece of advice I can give to people listening to this is have a call to action. It's not salesy. You are helping your community, and people want to know what the next steps are. They want to know how they can move forward. The thing that you have to remember is that, we've all worked with doctors. We've all worked with professors. We've all worked with blah, blah, blah. Most people have not worked with an attorney. They find this process intimidating. They find it scary. They have no idea what to expect. It's okay to kind of lay out the process and make it very clear, this is your next step. Book a meeting. These are the benefits.
I have basically had to sit on my hands for the last 5 minutes of you talking, because I just wanted to start clapping for you. Yeah. Everything you were saying, you were just pumping me up. It's not salesy. You are helping people. You are educating people. If they want to make a decision and come to the consultation, great. They're interested because they need what you're offering. It's not sales. And you know what? Even if it was sales, right? Let's call it what it is. It is sales. You're not a snake oil salesman. You're not selling them a bad car that is going to break down. You're not selling them a will that is bogus and they don't need. You're selling them your service that you went to law school for, that you pay a good amount of money to advertise. It's simple, right? Give the people what they're asking for. So yeah, sorry, I can't clap while you're talking because that would interrupt you and that would be rude, but I wanted to. I do want to ask you though, I'm sorry. What did you say?
Appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. See, it doesn't, I can't hear and talk at the same time. I'm deaf. I want to ask you, because you alluded to this before, and I was just interested in what your webinars are like. But when it comes to outsourcing and automating tasks, what are some of the things that what are some of the other things? Because I know you mentioned that you send your drafts out to get done by back office drafting or something like that.
Yep,
I
back office
was paying
drafting.
attention. But what are some of the things that you mostly recommend to get automated and outsourced? And what are some of your tips for attorneys when it comes to like outsourcing it and automating these tasks?
Yeah, so there's a few things. First of all, I'm a big believer in a virtual receptionist, having someone answer your phones 24/7. I was surprised. My first cohort of lawyers who are all amazing, and I was so grateful to be working with them all. But I would say about 70% of them didn't have someone answering their phones 24/7. Many of them were just answering that. I couldn't believe it. I was like, when was the last time you called your doctor? And the doctor picked up, you know? Again, I can see that you agree with that. So there's some simple steps that you can take. Get someone answering your phones 24/7. And then what you want to do, and this is another trick that I've learned, is your Google profile. You should have a Google profile for your business, right? You know how when you Google a business, that pops up. When you've got someone answering your phone 24/7, then you can put on your Google profile that you're open 24/7. Now, what that means is that if they pick up the phone and they call, first of all, I get phone calls from prospects that I don't answer, of course, but they come in at 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night. People are poking around online. They're looking, they have questions. They're going to call you. You're going to get that business that someone says they closed at 5 is not going to get. And then you get a message from the answering service, and you can look at the lead and decide if you want to respond. I'm not saying you've got to respond to leads at 3 a.m, but I'm saying that you want to capture those leads, right? So first of all, get a virtual receptionist. Get an online booking system. I use Calendly. That's the most common one, I think. And it amazes me the number of people who are taking appointments over the phone, or they just don't have a system in place. All of my meetings, and when you're in estate planning, you can run people through the same meetings. It's all automated, right? No one ever calls me on the phone or deals with a receptionist. People want to book online. I want to book online. If I'm going to the vet or the nail salon or whatever, I want to book online. So those are a couple of things that you can do that are really easy to implement for estate planning. And then there's some other things, like there's some CRMs that I could recommend. We talk about this more in the course. But I think it's important to point out that having these systems in place and automating certain things and all of that, it doesn't mean that you're providing cookie cutter legal advice, right? You're still counseling the client, drafting them a plan that's tailored to them. This is not, you shouldn't feel bad about automating certain things. And I can tell you, I've never had a client miss a meeting. Why? Because Calendly sends like 5 reminders, that happen behind the scenes. So the point is to make your time as efficient as possible so you can focus laser-like on servicing the client.
Do you get a lot of applause at your webinars?
I don't get applause, but I'm glad that you asked that because it allows me to tell this really quick story. My first event was an in-person event, and it was in April of 2017, right after I opened my law practice. Mm-hmm. And I don't think of myself as being a great presenter. I was really nervous. Like, I hadn't been practicing estate planning very long. I don't think I'd even done an estate plan by that point. And presenting is scary. And I was really, really nervous. And I had 6 people show up from this parents group that I'd advertised to. So I go and I brought like my projector and whatever the heck we had back then. I had all my stuff, and I had like a little cheese and meat tray and all of this. And I was just really nervous. And I was doing it because I didn't really feel like I had a choice. I knew this was a good way to get business, so I was going to try. And I gave the presentation to these 6 people. And at the end of it, it was all moms. And at the end of it, one woman came up to me and she thanked me. And, and then she said, I was really nervous about responding to this and about showing up for this event, which I thought was kind of weird. I was like, why were you nervous? Like, I didn't get it. And then she said, the reason I was nervous is because I thought you were going to make me feel stupid. And that really, God bless this woman, because first of all, I was so glad that I didn't make her feel stupid. But what it did was it made me realize that, what we have to offer is very valuable and people care a lot about it. and it's intimidating to most people. So if you can talk about these things in a way that doesn't make them feel stupid, because I'm guessing, I'm just going to make a generalization here, but maybe as a woman, she's been made to feel stupid before for subjects that are similar to this, finances, your money. And I thought, if I do nothing else than give out this information to people in a way that doesn't make them feel stupid, then I'm winning, because I get that feeling. So I've never forgotten that. She became a client after that. And that was my very first event. And I think of that every time I present, is that people are intimidated by this information. They don't want to be made to feel stupid. You're helping them. So think of it that way.
I agree with you. I am married to a very intelligent woman who, throughout her career, has been made to feel stupid a lot. And so sometimes, like, I have to tell her, like, you're not stupid. You could do this. You're fine. It's like my saying, I tell this to myself, I read this in a book somewhere, is that, like, way stupider people than me have done this, right? Like, way dumber people than you are doing this stuff right now and being successful. So, like, give yourself a little bit of credit. But that's what I love about, like, that's what I love about the approach of education, is that you're not there to make that, or to tell them, like, use all your jargon and your this and that and I don't know, like, the abbreviations for things that nobody understands. You're there to help them, like, get answers to the problems that they have. I keep going back to, in my mind, to, that must be such an intimidating thing for this moms group in Manhattan. Like, what happened? What if something happens to me and I want my children to go back to Israel? They're going to be stuck here. I can't imagine, like, the fear that would evoke in me. But that's a big problem. And so I would go to you for answers. And if you made me feel silly or stupid, I certainly wouldn't sign up with you, right? So I like that approach. And I want to ask you now, if our listeners have enjoyed what they've heard from you in this interview and they want to get in touch with you either for coaching or estate planning, how can they go about doing so?
Yeah, definitely. So on the estate planning side, I only work with people in New York, right? So if you need an estate plan, just keep that in mind. Yeah. But coaching is what I'm really focusing on now, because I've just had a blast working with attorneys, and it is really, really fun helping people make money, right? Because that estate planning's got its own benefits, but working with other lawyers who, like, I get it. I was that person. I hung a shingle 2016, and I was like, this has to work. I have no other source of income. I'm not married. I had to make it work. I know how it feels. And I know that it's an investment. My course is an investment, but you're going to be working with someone who has been there and who has, like, clawed my way up to the top. So if you want to work with me on the coaching, the best way to do it is just to go to my website, which is 2hourlifestylelawyer.com. So it's the number 2 and an hourlifestylelawyer.com. And I've got some information on there about where you can book a discovery call, or my email's on there as well if you just want to send me an email and ask some questions. My coaching program is in its infancy. I just launched it this past summer of 2022. So I have a lot of really cool ideas and things that I'm going to be implementing. For now, I'm just focusing on the students that I have, just making sure that they get success and that I'm able to teach the content in a way that they can apply. But I have big things coming. I've got a lot of things that I want to do, and it's all geared towards helping lawyers make more money while working less. I know the feeling. I'm in the same bucket, so that's ultimately the goal. It's not necessarily to help you build an 8-figure law practice, right? It's just to help you earn a little bit more, work a little bit less, enjoy your life.
It does sound, though, like your coaching program, if somebody wanted to, could use what you're advising them to do to make 8 figures. But I like the idea of working less while still making the same amount of money. So you could do either. If your goal is to grow your business, I think you could do this stuff and just do more of it, But Laura, I want to thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I want to point out that the links to the 2-hour coaching lifestyle website, the booking of the call, and the email will all be in the description of this episode, wherever you're watching or listening to it. We hope you enjoyed this conversation, and we will be back with another episode of Everything Except the Law soon. Be sure to check out previous episodes on the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and the Answering Legal YouTube channel. We hope to see you next time, everyone. Laura, thank you again so much.
Thanks for having me.